Hi, friends. I don't know if you ever noticed, but I haven't had sponsors on the podcast. And that's because although I've been approached by a lot of brands, I don't use their products. I don't believe in their products, and I haven't wanted to introduce them to you. But today I am proud to introduce you to Grand Teton Ancient Grains. I love this company. It's a little farm in Idaho where they actually grow all the crops and then they mill it on site. And so they use regenerative farming practices. And so they don't use like pesticides, herbicides, never glyphosate. They test for glyphosate, which is disgusting. It's the ingredient in Roundup. So they grow everything there. They mill everything there. As a matter of fact, when you get their flour, which is einkorn flour, by the way, and that's like the most ancient grain there is, einkorn. It has a different kind of gluten in it. So a lot of people find it really easy to digest. They don't get that terrible bloaty feeling. But when you get their flour in the mail, it'll have the date that it was milled, which this one was literally days ago. And you have to use it within a year because it's fresh. It's a fresh product. It has the germ. It has the bran. Everything's intact. When you use traditional flours, they're meant to just sit on the shelf for years. So this is an incredible company. They have all kinds of great whole grains that I use in my bowls all the time, like spelt and emmer berries, all kinds of different things that are fabulous. And I use them instead of brown rice. And then they have all kinds of pasta products. So please welcome Grand Teton. I hope that you'll check out their website, ancientgrains.com, and you can explore on their site how to get free shipping. So thank you to Ancient Grains. And now today's episode with Chuck Carroll. You know Chuck Carroll as the host of the Exam Room podcast. You probably know his incredible story of weight loss, and then he's been battling some health issues. We'll talk about that. But wait till you hear what he says that he wished he could have told his 26-year-old self. All right, let's get on with it. I'm Lauren Bernick, helping you make the rest of your life the best of your life. Welcome to Age Like a Badass Mother. At one time, his 5'5" frame struggled to support the 420 pounds it carried every day. With a 66-inch waist and a 6XL shirt, Chuck's daily diet was a 10,000-calorie fast food feast. Chuck is here today to share his story of losing 265 pounds, as well as his current health struggles and wins. He hosts the Exam Room podcast for PCRM. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. It's a fabulous podcast. The show's been viewed and downloaded more than 125 million times and is the #1 ranked nutrition podcast in nearly 80 countries. Please welcome to the show, Chuck Carroll, the weight loss champion. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having. Do I look okay? I didn't shave.
You
and
are
I got
gorgeous.
Like a little 5 o'clock shadow thing.
Do you want to go shave? I mean, what?
I don't want. No. I'm not.
I think you look fabulous.
Thank you.
I'm also
Thank
just
you.
worried about, I switched glasses. I usually wear these glasses and I'm like, did I screw up? I kind of like these, but I guess.
No, those are more stylish. The ones that you have on now, totally more
like
stylish. I dig them. Yeah.
They're a little uncomfortable. Yeah. So we're both just worried about how we look, and that's life, isn't it?
Vanity. Thy name is Chuck and Lauren, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I get it.
So we're both doing pretty good.
Cool.
Okay. So, I'm sorry for anybody who's heard your story before, but there's possibly people who really don't know. And so can you give us the abbreviated version? How did you get to 400 pounds, Chuck? Were you like a chubby kid? Did your parents eat unhealthy, or what happened there?
Was I a chubby kid? Is the sky blue? Yeah, man. I was over 100 pounds by the time I was in the 3rd grade. I think there was myself and one other person in my class that was tipping the scales at 3 bills already.
Yep. I was in 5th grade. I was a chubby kid. And do you remember that? I know you remember that they used to call out your weight. Maybe by the time you came around, they didn't do that anymore. But I was growing up, the nurse would weigh you and then call out your weight for somebody to write down. And so, like, when I was in fifth grade and I was over 100 pounds, all the kids were like, oh my God.
Oh, that's brutal. No,
Yeah.
we had a program where we had the police come in and they did what they call, I think it was called Identikid, and they give us like little fake driver's licenses and stuff. You know, it's just in case you get lost, you can hand it to somebody. It's got all your particulars in there. But anyway, height and weight, of course, are going to go on there. And I remember stepping on the scales and it was like 100 and whatever. And I remember being mortified and like turning to the officer who was doing the weighing, and I was like, I gotta go on a diet. And that was like third
You
grade.
said
And
that
I'm
to
having
the
those
officer?
yes.
Oh my God.
You know, and
What'd
that
the
was
officer
beginning.
say?
I honestly couldn't remember to like save my life. I just remember being mortified.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would be many more years before I actually went on a diet, and then I went on many of them. But
Same.
yeah, you know, it was just, here's the deal. Like, single mom, not a lot of money, not a lot of time, lots of trips to the drive-through. And, you know, we had no idea, you know, the detriment that that food would have on our body, whether it be physically, getting addicted to it the way that I did, whatever the case may be. So we all knew that we were struggling with our weight, me more than anyone else. And, you know, it just built up over time. So you go from being that little chubby kid in the third grade to graduating high school at over 300 pounds, and then eventually getting up to 420 pounds because your eating is completely out of control and your day cannot end without a trip to Taco Bell where you're loading up. And one trip, you know, one meal was like close to 5,000 calories.
What were you, well, like, what was one meal?
All right, let's see if I can still remember this. It's been a while since I did the weight loss presentation. All right, it was 2 7-layer burritos, 2 beef grilled stuffed burritos, a chicken quesadilla, a nachos Bel Grande, a cheesy potato burrito, and a caramel empanada.
Oh my God.
And there may be, I may be leaving something out, but that sounds about right. So yeah, it was like all of that. And it was like $20 at the time. And this was like 16, 17 years ago. So you figure inflation, like I'm dropping like at least $35 per trip through the drive-through these days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you eat that like on the way home? Did you start eating, or did you wait till you got home? And
Wait till I got home. There was a ritual, right? So you sit down, put the food on the coffee table, you turn on the TV, you put on your fat man comfy pants, you break out all the fire sauce that they give you, and then you just begin with the 7-layer burritos and you work your way down the line until it's all gone. And then it was like food coma time, and, you know, wake up till the morning.
when after you finished eating, were you just so stuffed, or were you like used to it? Was your stomach like so stretched out that you were like, I feel okay?
I'd say I was pretty well used to it. I mean, I was full for sure, but, you know, I wasn't in agonizing pain. But it was just one of those things where I couldn't control myself. I was way out of control.
Yeah. Not like that, but I mean, I've felt like that, and I feel like I ate my share of fast food for sure growing up. So what was like the breaking point, or, you know, when you were like, okay, I got to do something about this, or what triggered that?
So many things. I mean, going on blood pressure medication when I'm a like freshman in high school, maybe even the 8th grade, constantly sick. Got to a point where I couldn't walk very far, and like literally, I'm talking just a matter of like 10, 20 feet without my chest beginning to feel like it was tightening, and then knowing that heart disease runs on both sides of my family. Never met my grandfather on my dad's side because he died. He had had a number of heart attacks before one ultimately claimed his life before I was even born. My own father had heart issues. On my mom's side, my grandfather there was having heart issues. And it's just like, all right, you know, like I'm just on the heart attack superhighway, and I'm still in my 20s. And I felt like, number one, I'm not going to live to see 30 if I don't make some changes. So that's pretty profound. But then, like, mentally, I also felt like garbage, because it's like, yeah, okay, professionally, I'm doing okay. I got my break on the radio. You know, I'm doing like morning radio in a major market, which is wonderful. I'm a sidekick on WBIG FM in Washington, D.C., which was so appropriate. And, but I had to lean into the big Chuck character. And so whenever they needed something stupid done, you know, let's have Chuck do it, you know, have him
Did they
dress
call you
up
Big Chuck?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They built promotions around it and everything. So you need somebody like to jump in the freezing Potomac River in the middle of January. Well, let's have Chuck do it, but let's put him in a grass skirt and a coconut bra. Cool. Like it's
Oh
radio. Like,
yeah, I
let's
saw
go.
that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
Um,
Big Cupid, like you name it. Like I just
yeah,
leaned into it. So
that's and was it like also you probably are at the age where you want to date? Were you able to date or,
So I did not have much confidence. I had zero game, and I still have zero game. So it's
but
like,
you have a gorgeous wife
well,
and talented.
and that's a miracle. The fact that I wound up with anybody, let alone her. Julie rocks my world. So thank you. But at the time, being so large, it's like your self-esteem is not much. But I did get up the nerve to ask out a young lady who I had a crush on, and like she kind of reluctantly agreed because we were vibing, but like then she refused to ever let anybody know that we were an item because she was ashamed. That's all I could think, was that she was ashamed to be with somebody my size, and it was like a whole thing. And so I got tired of being hidden for a year and a half, and at the time though, I honestly thought, Lauren, like that was as good as I could get. So,
How old were
I
you
dealt
then?
with it. 25, something like
Oh
that.
wow. How old are you
Yeah.
now?
43.
40.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really heartbreaking. So all that, and then was there what was the thing that started you on your journey? I mean, I know all that played into it. Couldn't have felt good.
Here's the thing. It's like there's not one thing. Like it's just a culmination of all of it. And so it's just like, in my case, I woke up one morning and was just like, I can't keep doing this. Like I'm either going to die or I'm going to live miserably and still die early. What kind of life is that? I have to make some changes. So not knowing what to do, having like tried every diet I felt like known to man and then some, I decided to have weight loss surgery because my father and stepmother at that point had it. They had had success, at least short term. And then, so that's what I wound up doing. And for a very long time, I was kind of the model patient for it. But kind of got disenfranchised. I knew like I was a food addict, and I didn't want to reintroduce any of the garbage that I had been addicted to for so long that got me into a really unhealthy space. But like going to the support groups, which were mandatory after the procedure, and like being around other people who had it, and like seeing, well, I found that maybe if I just eat a little bit of French fries, I'm okay. Then people start bringing bags of candies, bottles of Sprite and soda and stuff, and like the dietitian's in the room, and she's just like, yeah, moderation. I knew daggone good and well that like, you can eat your way, so to speak, out of the surgery. And I also knew, based off of previous experience, it's like once I reintroduce those foods into my system, I'm not going to be able to stop again. And so I kind of became disenfranchised. But when I really branched off and went on my own in terms of like seeking nutrition advice was when my surgeon, told me like I needed to eat a hamburger because I had reached my goal weight. It was like, you've reached your goal weight. Now it's time to eat a hamburger. Not like could, should, like you need to eat this hamburger. Wow. And I was just like, I really don't think I do. And that was kind of like the last time I was at the surgeon's office. And then, I wasn't eating plant-based, didn't really know what vegan was at that point. And so I just kind of was eating what I thought to be a healthy diet, which helped me, yes, maintain some of the weight loss. Started creeping up a little bit, but then when I finally discovered plant-based, it was like, boom, all the baby fat, so to speak, that I had been carrying for so long just kind of melted away. I got all the way down to 140, stayed there for many, many, many years, and was super healthy. So it was just that culmination of a whole lot of stuff, and then just like, I can't take it anymore. So it wasn't one thing.
How much weight did you lose initially just after the weight loss surgery? And then how long was it until you found plant-based eating from that point?
Yeah, initially I got down to about 155. So that would have been, if I do the math here, 265 pounds. And then like, 15 more pounds of stubborn fat that was hanging on fell off after I went plant-based. And then like all of my other numbers fell into place too, which was awesome. So that was like a year and a half to lose the weight initially. And then there was like golly, like a good 7, 8 year gap between then and when I went plant-based. Yeah.
How did you find out about plant-based eating?
I was hosting a sports radio show with a Washington Commanders player here in town, and we were invited to do a PSA about eating healthy for this group called the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Neither one of us had ever heard of them before. Neither one of us knew what vegan meant. Neither one of us had any idea what a plant-based diet was, but we both liked the idea of eating healthy, so we agreed to do it. And that was my introduction. And then a couple of more years passed after that. I was then working as a news reporter, got tired of, reporting on death and destruction every day, and was interviewing an athlete, a former professional wrestler, was still a professional wrestler, guy by the name of Austin Aries, who was in WWE at the time, one of their champions. And he had written this awesome book called My Plant-Powered Journey from the Bingo Halls to the Big Time. And this is a guy who grew up in Wisconsin around, beer and sausage and dairy cheese. And, cheese. Yeah, big time cheesehead. And he's like, yeah, man, you should really consider doing this plant-based thing. And he was like, go watch What the Health and, give me the typical list of documentaries and books to read. And the day after I watched What the Health, I went vegan and have not looked back.
What the Health is, I was already doing my plant-based journey, and I made my husband go see it in the theater with me, and he was still eating just whatever he wanted. And he became, I would say, mostly vegetarian. He still sneaks a little here and there, some fish or something. Yeah. But yeah, What the Health was a good one. Are you the kind of person who, when you saw What the Health, you just went in 100%, or did you dabble, or did it take you a little time?
Oh, I'm an all or none guy. I didn't know what a healthy vegan diet looked like, but I definitely went vegan overnight. So, a lot of Gardein stuff up front. Yeah. But I was already eating an abundance of, fresh fruits and vegetables. Really what that helped me with was eliminating dairy, which was still a big thing. I was still eating a lot of fish and chicken. Not so much cheese, because cheese, had a lot of fat and salt in it that I wasn't necessarily interested in. So I was still eating, pretty healthy, no fried foods, anything like that. But this really got me over the hump, So yeah, but definitely overnight.
What? Yeah, I did too. And I always say, I really think that's I know that I want people to do what they have to do and do it how they need to do it. But I think the easiest way is just to go all in, because it lets your palate change. It gives you a chance to see results. And if you keep kind of just dipping your toe, you're not really getting the chance to do it, to change your palate, right?
I agree. And to the fact that I think a lot of the foods that would be cut out if you're going to that whole food plant-based diet, because they're so addictive, that terrifies people. But it's like trying to, quit smoking by tapering off.
Right.
I agree with you. If you just go cold turkey, yeah, those first couple of weeks, they can be rough. I don't want to sugarcoat that. They sucked for me because my microbiome was changing. I was having terrible bloating. I did it the wrong way, come to find out. But yeah, definitely just get that garbage out of your system. And then, once you come to that realization also that there are healthy recipes that can replicate your pizza and your burritos and things that you've loved. We're talking about low fat, whole food, plant-based recipes that taste delicious, and you can eat that and still have, a great deal of satisfaction from it. It's game on. So suddenly this ultra restrictive diet isn't restrictive at all. You're eating the same stuff. You're just eating healthier versions of it.
Yeah. That's kind of what I love so much about eating this way. I always say this, I would never in my former life have eaten macaroni and cheese that. I would be that's kid food. That'll make me fat. And I love macaroni and cheese. I eat it all the time now. It's a whole grain pasta with, nutritional yeast and chickpeas, whatever I put in my Vitamix to make it like that. And broccoli in the water. And, it's so damn good. And I can eat it without any guilt.
Mac and cheese with broccoli. You tell that to anybody who isn't eating a whole food plant-based diet, and they're going to be like, that sounds like garbage. But to me, you're making my mouth water right now. I'm all for it. It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good. So, all right. So you're going along. Everything's well. You got your job with the exam room with Dr. Barnard, doing this great podcast. Your life's going along. You got a fabulous wife. And then what happened? You started having some health problems. When did this first pop up, and what was happening?
Health problems.
Health
Boy, oh
problems.
boy. Just little ones.
I know.
Yeah, man.
I know. You've really been through the ringer. As a
Jeez
matter of
Louise,
fact,
man.
I know you just got out of the hospital. You just had surgery. And so I really appreciate you being here, honestly.
It's cool. No place I'd rather be, Lauren.
Okay,
I just wanted to
that,
see your
but-
reaction. I just wanted to see your reaction. I'm totally messing with you. Like, it's cool. Like, I love doing it. Like, I love getting the opportunity, honestly, to share my story, because what I have discovered in these 3 years, and I'll tell you all about that, it is that there are so many people out there who are suffering with these like mysterious symptoms that have doctors baffled because all of the tests come back normal and they still feel like garbage. And so there's so many of these complex, really not underappreciated, but like misunderstood cases. It's like impossible to diagnose. I want to be able to bring a little bit of hope to those people, because there were many days over the course of the last 3 years where I didn't know if I would ever get back to this point again. And right now, like I'm pretty darn close to feeling like I used to. And like I'm so profoundly grateful to be in this position, to be able to share the story and just offer that little bit of inspiration to somebody who's just clinging on to any shred of hope that they can possibly find. Let me be that lifeline for the time being. So I, from the bottom of my heart, really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing it. And yeah, I always try to really have that person who's watching this in mind, and try to give them what they need. So what happened? What were like the signs and a little bit of that journey?
A little bit of like gradual ramping up to all kinds of chaos and hell. But it began when my mom got super sick and was in the hospital. Like, we didn't know if she was going to make it. And then like shortly after I was able to return home, she turned out okay. But shortly after, I returned home, I started to feel super, super, super bloated, like really bloated. The pain that I was feeling was like, it didn't matter what I ate, when I ate, what I had to drink, like it didn't matter. Like the bloating was persistent. And it reminded me of these women who I had interviewed on the show who had suffered mightily from endometriosis. Now, did I think for a second I had endometriosis? Absolutely not.
I hope
Physically
not,
impossible.
Chuck, or we have to talk.
You want to talk about a complex case.
Yeah.
So yeah, was not endometriosis. But
Surprise.
It was but it was like, I used a lot of the tips and tricks that they talked about for dealing with the bloating. Was like leaning over the back of a sofa or the back of a chair, or using an abdominal binder and just like wrapping yourself as tightly as possible, just to put some pressure on the abdomen to like try to keep that bloating at bay. But like nothing was really working. Nothing was really, despite going to the gastroenterologist, he's baffled. We did some endoscopies, colonoscopies, everything's coming back normal. Little did I know that was going to be the beginning of a whole bunch of like more questions than answers. Graduate, so it's getting worse and worse, but I still make this trip. I had a 2-city speaking engagement, first in Oklahoma. Where was I going? Nebraska. Omaha. I was going to Omaha and then was going to LA. Well, when I landed in Omaha, I started to feel like I couldn't breathe, like really scary shortness of breath. And that got worse whenever I would eat or drink anything. So I kind of like stopped eating, stopped drinking, even something as mundane as a cup of water would start to set me off. And so like that was scary, but I'm a soldier. So I tried to like press on and go to LA. Well, when I got to LA, it was like my chest exploded and I was on fire. And like not just like typical heartburn. I mean, like this kind of radiated throughout my chest and in my lung area. What I didn't realize at the time was that we actually had stomach acid, not to get gross, but I'm just letting you know what happened.
Get gross. Let's do it.
come up through the esophagus, back down my windpipe, and was going into my lungs. And that was what was causing that insane burning sensation. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to like make it home. I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm kind of freaking out at this point. It's like my world is kind of turning upside down. I go to kind of a hole in the wall clinic. They take an x-ray and the guy's like, well, you know, it looks like a hernia right here is kind of pushing through. I sent that over I was connected to like the hernia doctor in LA. God bless, you know, connections and having interviewed like a gajillion doctors. Right. It's a small world once you get in it. So I'm very grateful, you know, that a friend was able to put me in contact with this guy, but he didn't see a hernia. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna take that off the table. But then my friend Dr. Christy Funk also got me set up with some of her incredible doctor friends there who did deeper scans, and literally every single thing that we did that day. We're talking like hours of scans and tests in the hospital, more testing later on, diagnostic testing at another facility that had better imaging later that day, and everything is coming up normal. And I'm freaking out because the initial guy told me is like, if I'm you, I wouldn't fly home because we don't know how this hernia is gonna react. And I was like, oh shit, you know, excuse my language.
No, you could say shit. You could say whatever you want.
All right. Well, yeah, badass is in the name of the show. Okay. All right. So anyway, I'm kind of like freaking out, but it's like, I'm also like, well, I don't know how I'm going to make it back. I'm like looking at renting cars. I'm looking at taking the train, and I'm just like, all of that's going to take days. I just got to like roll the dice and get home. So it's like, and I can't sleep. So it's like midnight, and I'm changing my flight to the first flight out the next morning. And I fly home, I make it there, and I'm just like in tears as soon as I walk through the door because I don't know what's happening. Go back to the gastroenterologist. He maxes me out on acid suppressing medication, and that helps short term. But then like a couple of weeks later, boom, everything comes back again. But I'm still trying to press on. Go to Texas for an event. Come back from Texas, and this is when S really started to hit the fan. I'm sitting there. Yeah, shit hit the fan. There you go.
You can say it.
There you go. I'm sitting eating my breakfast one morning, and it was like all of a sudden I felt stoned. And I'm talking like the kind of stoned I was back in high school, you know, cutting class, doing what I did back in the day. Mm-hmm. Anyway, but I wasn't imbibing in that. I hadn't done that in a very, very long time. And I was like, what is going on? And then it went away, and then it would come back, and then it went away, and then it would come back. And like, this is getting really concerning to me. And then eventually, anytime I would eat or drink anything in the morning, those feelings would come back and they would stay all day. And it was like an out of body experience. And the anxiety that comes with that was through the roof. It was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
Go to the ER for this one, you know, and again, the tests are all normal. You know, what does the doctor tell me to do? Take some Dramamine and eat salmon. Swear to God. Yeah, take Dramamine and eat salmon.
What was the point of the salmon?
They were thinking I was low on omegas. You know, yeah. So
okay.
Anyway.
I believe that.
I get tired of my gastroenterologist not having answers, and then like stopped returning my phone calls. So yeah, shout out to this guy.
Oh wow.
Yeah. You know, because he didn't know what to do. Like, you know, you put. I'm just going to get real.
Just go.
You put the name advanced in your clinical practice. We expect you to be advanced. The only thing this guy knew how to do was a colonoscopy and an endoscopy. Anything that, you know, he couldn't diagnose off of that was not going to be able to handle it.
So he should have been called very basic gastroenterologist.
Basic care. Yeah, right. You know, like any other doctor, you know.
Anyway. It's so incredibly frustrating. I can't imagine how you were feeling because you have all these symptoms. You know it's not right. You're starting to have trouble functioning. You're scared. You're overwhelmed and trying to get answers, and you can't get answers. And it's so sad. Like,
you're telling me.
I mean,
you're telling me.
And then what happened? Like, how long did this go? This went on for what, 3 years?
Months and months. Yeah. So then I make the decision to go to George Washington University Hospital, see my old gastric bypass surgeon. And it turns out he had retired. So I go see this other doctor who had taken over. And we run some tests. Shocker, the majority of them are coming back normal. The only thing that we saw on the scan was, again, a small hiatal hernia, and then some sort of what they call biliary dyskinesia, like my gallbladder wasn't acting right. Basically, it was emptying slow. So like maybe there's like some sludge and some gook in there, and that's causing some issues. So not knowing what else to do and everything else having turned out normal, I once again raised the idea of the hiatal hernia. And he was like, I don't want to hear any more about that. You know, it's a small
Can I
one.
just ask, what's the difference between like a hernia and a hiatal hernia?
So there's a gajillion different types of hernias. A hiatal hernia is one that actually like where your diaphragm kind of fails and like the muscle kind of opens up, and that allows your stomach then to rise through the diaphragm and go into your chest cavity and, you know, put some pressure on everything that's in there, including your lungs, which ultimately explained why I felt like I couldn't breathe. It's also very close to a lot of nerves that are there, including the vagus nerve, which, flash forward, spoiler alert, things may have been irritated and was causing the neurologic symptoms. Okay. Anyway. So this doctor was adamant that he didn't want to hear any more about the hiatal hernia, like was stern about it. Like I was a child getting a talking to. I was like, all right, whatever, dude. But he takes out the gallbladder. And because we didn't know what else to do, you know, and like I'm talking to my people in the background and they're like, yeah, dude, this is where we're at. If you were my patient, I would take you to the hospital myself. I was like, cool. All right. With your blessing. Let's do it. That only made my symptoms worse, to be honest with you. And that began a point where I felt so bad that like anytime I would eat or drink anything, again, literally water would send me like into orbit. I stopped eating for like 6 months and got all the way down to like 114 pounds, like straight emaciated. Mind you, I still like, I don't have my extra skin cut off from having lost all that weight initially. So I've got like a lot of droopy skin that I think at one time was estimated like 15 or 20 pounds worth, right? It's just conveniently tucked. And so like, you look at that 114, you take, you know, even the 15 pounds off of that, like I'm under 100 pounds. I'm 5'5". I know I'm a small guy, but like, I should not be under 100 pounds. Like that's asinine. Remember, we began this conversation talking about the last time I was under 100 pounds was in the 3rd grade.
Right.
Because that Identikid program was later in the year. I'm sure that Book It free pizza program put me over 100. but anyway, so like I'm freaking out, and I go to Johns Hopkins. And I asked the doctor there, like the gastroenterologist, and I was like so excited to go. I was like, we're going to go see the wizards at Johns Hopkins. They're going to get me all fixed up. Go there. Number one, had to wait forever to get this appointment. Number two, you know, having the conversation with the doctor's puzzled, shocker, because all the tests were normal. And I remember asking her, like, I was like, am I dying? Because I literally thought that is what was happening to me at that point. And she's like, I don't know. Again, just like cold. And I was like, oh, okay. We're there. All right. So that was a rough one. And I was with my cousin at that point, and he had taken me up there because I'm feeling like I'm not really in a good space to drive. I wasn't comfortable driving given the symptoms that I was having. And I remember my wife was on speakerphone at that point. And, you know, she was like, well, that's not very comforting. And I was like, no, it's not, Jules. Thank you for stating the obvious. And it was not. And that was the one and only time I ever saw that doctor. And so I wrote, just kind of out of desperation one night, Dr. Brian Carlson, who works as an incredible surgeon at the Mayo Clinic. Phenomenal type 1 diabetic success story on a plant-based diet. Wonderful guy. I wrote him and I was like, look, dude, here's the situation. It's growing dimmer. I got to go see like your people up there. Can you help me out? And he did. But he began that email. He was like, wow, I'm happy to help you out, but please know in some cases there are no answers. And I was like, oh shit. Again, that's three. I was like,
three shits.
That's like not great news. But I was like, I don't care. Like, let's go, because we have to keep searching for answers. And it even took the teams there. And I love the Mayo Clinic. I mean, this is world-class healthcare. It has the reputation that it does for a very good reason. And I wish everyone could experience this once in their life, at least. God forbid you ever need to go there. But man, this is the place to go. Mm. And they were so caring and compassionate and optimistic and hopeful, and we're using all of these positive terms while never guaranteeing, a great outcome. But just to finally have an ally, somebody who's on your side, who gets invested in your case and cares about you genuinely. Like,
that's important.
It made all the difference in the world. Like, even though those first few times I was there and they were just running test after test after test, which kept coming back normal, they were still so optimistic.
And didn't discount you, it sounds like.
Never.
Because there's also that thing that has to be going through your mind that the doctors are kind of leading the way of, like, this guy's a hypochondriac, or it's all on his mind, or, that has to be. And so just to have them believe you, to have them be a comfort to you, that's a big deal.
It is. I never once felt like they thought that I was some sort of hypochondriac or faking it or whatever. Like that,
Right.
That was not the case. And they even have, like programs that they put me through that were holistic, that taught like breathing practices, diaphragmatic breathing to, calm the anxiety, especially when you were short of breath and like that, feeling like you can't breathe. I don't care who you are. That's a pretty alarming feeling. So like being able to deal with that and them taking, a very close look at, another doctor who thought that I had fibromyalgia, and, they confirmed that diagnosis, but now they're not so sure. But anyway, it was just like they looked at everything, even sending me to a chiropractor. And it was just like everybody got invested in my case. I guess because it was like such a rare thing. I don't know. Like everybody was like gung ho for it. And I was like, oh, okay, man, even the chiropractor like wants me to succeed, like sent me a letter. And it was like, I just wanted you to know I'm leaving the Mayo Clinic, but I'm going to practice at Duke University. And so, North Carolina is not too far from where you're at. If you ever need anything, just let me know. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, these are good people.
Right.
Anyway, come to find out, scan after scan after scan, what pops up again? The hiatal hernia that got dismissed back
From the very first little walk-in clinic, right?
Yep. So this gets diagnosed, and then my amazing gastroenterologist, Dr. Iris Wong, was also smart enough to be like, hey, I wonder if something's wonky with your gastric bypass surgery. Why don't you go see Dr. Omar Ghanem? He's our, gastric bypass surgery specialist. Maybe we can talk about reversing that. So go over and see Ghanem. Ghanem's like, oof, this is a case right here. I was like, you're telling me, try living with it for 3 years, right? So we make up the game plan to go on a feeding tube and put that into the portion of my stomach that had been stapled off. And basically have been dormant now since I got that surgery in 2009. So coming up, this will be 17 years this year?
And this is the surgery that you just had. Is that
correct? Right. So mind you, like I just fast forwarded like 2.5, 3 years in a nutshell. I went to Mayo Clinic many times before we got to this point. So here's what they did, right? Imagine this is a normal stomach as your fist, right? When they do the gastric bypass, they staple off a portion of the stomach right here. And then this little part here, the thumb, kind of becomes the portion of your stomach that remains in use. And then this bigger portion kind of, stays there and doesn't do much ever again.
So for those who are only listening, he's making a fist with his fingers curled in, and the only part, they staple everything off except for the little thumb at the end.
Exactly.
So that's the only part of your stomach that's left.
Yeah. So think
Well,
about
dang.
giving a thumbs up and then just kind of
Yep.
turning it sideways,
Right.
turning your hand sideways. So with the feeding tube, they actually inserted it like right into the stapled off portion of the stomach that's been dormant all of this time. And so the thought there was, well, if we, do the best that we can restoring him to quote normal anatomy and those symptoms go away, then we can go in and reverse the weight loss surgery, fix the hernia, and then obviously take out the feeding tube at the same time.
So you're on a feeding tube right now.
I am, yeah.
Does that mean that you're not eating anything else?
That is
Is that
correct.
your only nutrition?
This is it.
Wow, you've got it right there.
Let me see.
Like
I don't see it on my camera, but if you take it full.
No, I don't see. Oh, now I
there we
see
go.
it. It's like on
So,
an
yeah.
IV pole.
Exactly. So I do walk around. I'm tethered to this thing.
And you have a special. You're not just using like the hospital nutrition that they would give you. You're using a special plant-based one, right?
Kate Farms, my friend.
Kate
Yeah,
Farms.
they got all
Shout
excited
out.
when I asked for Kate Farms in the hospital. They were like, "Oh my God, a patient knows feeding tube formula." I was like, "Yes, I do. I've done my research." And so yeah, this is plant-based. It was actually, I believe, if story goes, it's a husband and wife had a daughter who was critically ill, needed a feeding tube, couldn't tolerate the products that were currently on the market because of like, I want to say it was like a dairy issue or something. So they developed a plant-based formula and then took it to market as Kate Farms, Kate being the child. And boom, there you go. So they've got feeding tube formula, and they've also got nutrition shakes for people who are just looking to do meal replacement, which are actually quite tasty. They sent some to PCRM a number of years ago, and those things went like hotcakes in the kitchen. Yeah, yeah.
That's good to know.
But yeah, they're good people.
I hope nobody needs it, but if you do, Kate Farms,
I'm
okay.
saying, well, I never thought that I would need it, but here we are. But anyway, so Ghanem and Dr. Wong, I mean, they were spot on because here we are now almost a month removed from that surgery, and I have not felt this good in a very, very, very long time. I would say like 98, 99% of my GI symptoms are gone, and then the neurologic symptoms, I say it's like 85, 90% gone, maybe even a little bit more than that. So I wouldn't say like being tethered to a feeding tube means I'm living my best life, but I'm living my best life for the last 3 years. That's for damn sure.
Oh, dang. And so,
And I'll
okay,
put the
and so
frozen
is the
one.
bottom
there we
line
go.
that your surgery, what was it? It was a hiatal hernia mixed with what? A bad surgery?
Wonky surgery. Yeah. So one of the other things that I discovered from the one doctor at GW Hospital back here in the DC area, the one who was Kurt with me, he said that my original surgeon who did the gastric bypass had the reputation of being a butcher. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. And so, yeah, when they were in there exploring what they call the new stomach, the doctors call it a pouch. When they were in there and looking around, they were like, yeah, there's a lot of scar tissue in here, and this is actually a lot bigger than most pouches are, and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, all right. So it's a little bit wonky. I still don't understand completely how that would contribute to what's been going on, but I'm all for having it reversed, because if that means I'm going to feel better, then that's what we're going to do. End of story. And so...
Are you nervous about gaining weight?
Well, no. I mean, because my metabolism went so wonky when I got, sick and went all the way down to 114, and then like started eating a normal diet for me again immediately. So it went from, maybe 200 calories a day to close to 2,000 again. And it's just like my metabolism was not ready for that. And so it kind of, went wonky, and obviously I put on a few pounds over the last year. But since I've had this, it's like 20 pounds has already come back off. So like my face is thinning out. The inflammation I felt like just like washed out of my body pretty rapidly. And so I'm grateful for that. And I think that because I will return to eating that whole food plant-based diet,
Sure.
like, I'm not worried about
Yeah.
gaining weight. And I'm working with my friend Maxim Seguin from Mavi Wellness on
Yep.
what he calls reverse dieting and like muscle tone and, all kinds of things. So we're going to build version 3.0. But I'm not worried about, being in the running to play Santa Claus next Christmas.
No, I think you're going to be fine. And I'm so grateful, as I know that you are, to for you to be getting to the bottom of this, because I know anyone who's followed this journey just felt horrible for you to be going through this. And I do appreciate that, you're trying to give hope to people who are getting diagnosed with nothing when they feel something.
Yeah,
That's
man.
the worst.
It sucks. And there are so many people out there, and it's like, it brings a sense of comfort to know that you're not the only person struggling. But at the same time, it's like one of the things I was guilty of was reading Reddit forums, like people who are suffering from one thing or another, and like they're just at their wits' end, and their doctors are baffled, and like they're begging and begging and begging for, a good outcome for just one of those stories that maybe then they can use as the blueprint for their own healing. And I want to be that blueprint, because right now it is largely void of success stories. I want to be that story for other people. I want them to know that they, never give up, just to keep on going. It's like my granddaddy said to me back in the day, is like, if you want to get through hell, you have to keep going. You can't turn back. You have to keep going forward. And so even though it's a very long and dark road, you just have to keep pushing. You just have to keep pushing.
Yeah, and I wish you good success with that. Is there, before we move on, is there anything else you want to say about it? I mean, it's, the one thing I keep thinking about is, your tagline is the weight loss champion. And I know that it's had to be so difficult to, go through what you're going through in the public, and to gain a little weight, and for people to judge you. And it's just so shitty. It's so shitty that people feel judged. But like, what can you talk about the mental part of that?
Yeah,
the pressure.
Yeah, that sucks. So it's like I started getting those messages early last year. And the incorrect assumption that so many people jumped to was that, I had fallen off of the food wagon, because at that point, like, I had not talked publicly about what I had been going through at that point for 2 years. Right. But what I found funny was, like, nobody said anything to me when I was super, super, super skinny, looking straight anorexic.
Right.
But as soon as I started to put weight on, like, people were like, oh man, it looks like you're really struggling. I was a food addict too, hit me up at any time. Well-intentioned, right? But like, there was one person in particular who kept messaging me over and over and over again out of concern. And it was just like, one day I just like kind of snapped, and I was like, you don't know the story. You're assuming that I'm going to McDonald's. You're assuming that I'm going to Taco Bell, but you're assuming incorrectly. 100%. You don't know the story. And like, who are you to even bring that up? You say that this is something that you struggled with. Well, think about how it was for you back in the day when people would like fat shame you, right? Did it make you feel great? No. Well, what are you doing right now? Oh, and so like, it wasn't like, hey, fatty, fatty, fat, fat, it was just like, I noticed you're back at McDonald's. I was like, God darn it. I'm not back at McDonald's, man. And there were so many people who assumed that it was heartbreaking. And then eventually, people were like, well, should you really call yourself the weight loss champion anymore? Optics. And I'm just like, So we're there. So temporarily and reluctantly, I relinquished that title, but make no mistake about it, your boy's coming for it, and I'll get it back. I'm not worried about it. I'm already 20 pounds on my way.
I'm sorry to bring it up, because I know it is a sore spot, but I feel like it's such a part of what I like to talk about, is how we shame other people, how we're, what is that? What's the word? Shots in front? That's not the right word. But have you ever heard of that? That's definitely not the word. It's something like that. It's some kind of scary German word, where it's like you're happy when somebody's miserable or going through something bad.
Is that a Freud thing? Is that like shits and Freud?
What is that? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Shits and Freud.
I hate. Why did I bring that up? I don't know what the word
I have
is.
no
I don't
idea.
know what it means. It means like you're getting joy out of watching somebody go through something.
Oh, that's no fun.
Yeah, it's a terrible word. But, you know, it just reminds you, like, you're out there trying to bring information to people to make their lives better, to help them. You're putting yourself out there, and it's hard. I never want to forget that I'm grateful every day to be able to talk to the public. But
Yeah.
there are aspects that are hard.
Yeah.
Like I struggle to get my LDL cholesterol where it should be, you know, and I share openly with it. But yeah, there are people who are downright crappy to me all the time about it and have things to say. And my intention and your intention is to help people and to be vulnerable. And so when people bring up things like that, I guess I just want to remind everybody to be loving and kind, because you don't know what other people are going through, and not to make assumptions. And, you know, I thought it was important to bring that up, even though I'm sorry, I you know, I don't want to have to bring pain to you, but I think it's important to remind people you don't know what's going on with somebody.
No,
and you should always assume the best.
But here's the thing, like I also assume that somebody who does throw barbs, even though they like royally piss me off, you got to figure that there's something miserable going on in that person's life too, to be just like taking it out on some random person that they don't know. Right. And it's just like, okay, I don't know what you're going through right now. You've pissed me off, but in my heart of hearts, I hope that your day gets a little bit better. Yeah. Right now, pound sand, but I still got some empathy for you. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of the way that I look at it. At least the more, you know, malicious ones. The initial person that just like kept poking and poking and poking and coming from like what they thought was a good place, I got it. But you know, like the more cruel ones are the ones that I don't particularly care for.
You don't need to respond to.
Yeah.
So is there anything else before we move on that you want to say about this situation?
Never give up, man. And thank you to everybody who has been so supportive of me. For every one Yahoo that's out there that posted, you know, venom, there have been 1,000 nice messages that have come through, all of which are positive. Mm-hmm. And the way that people have also reached out to me, pouring their own heart out, you know, has really been eye-opening to me. How much, you know, we're all kind of suffering in one way or another, or it's somebody close to them. And, you know, just them feeling vulnerable enough to express that to me, like that meant the world. So, if anything, like despite the fact that we kind of started this in a little bit of a negative light, at least getting to this point, going public with this has kind of restored my faith in humanity in a lot of ways. You know, there are far, far, far more good people out there than villains. So keep that in mind.
You are definitely beloved, and that's earned. That's earned from all your years of helping people and goodwill and all you've done. So you're 43. Mm-hmm. This is Age Like a Badass Mother. So let's talk about aging a little. What do you love about being 43? And what do you wish you could go back and tell your 20-year-old self?
Oh, boy. That conversation with a 20-year-old, that would be a deep one. I mean, number one, it's like I don't regret having gastric bypass because that's all I knew at the time. But I would love to impart a lot of what I know now to the 26-year-old version of me who is getting ready to go through with it. I literally had that procedure done just a couple days after my 27th birthday. And so I wish that maybe I could have had one more try at doing things a more natural way as opposed to the gastric bypass. But, you know, here we are. And every opportunity has presented itself for me to help other people who are struggling. So I'm looking at this as you know, a blessing rather than a curse. And like that's a choice that you have to make. Like happiness, I do believe, is a choice. I'm choosing that because it'd be so easy to go dark and cynical all the time. And so what am I looking forward to about being 43? is actually feeling what a 43-year-old looks like or should feel like. It's like, I have not felt good at all in my 40s. You know, this has been a 3-year journey, and here I am 43. So I'm going to take a rain check and give you an IOU for answering that particular thing. I just want to feel what 43 is, and then we'll get to that. So we'll circle back later on this year.
What, let's talk about your podcast, because it is so spectacular. Tell me some of your favorite standout guests.
Well, I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't start with my boy, Dr. Will Bolsowitz, who
He's
has become
on a lot lately.
Well, he is
because
one
of his
of my
book, right?
Yeah, he is one of my best friends in real life as well. And he and I just hit it off from the word go, and formed a friendship. And so he's on every month on the Exam Room, and now we do our own podcast as well called The Gut Insider. So that's on his YouTube channel and all podcast platforms, where we just, get the opportunity to play around and be guys and, try to educate, inspire, and be immature at the same time. I think that
he's the fiber guy, in case anybody doesn't know. Fiber Fueled. And what's his new book?
Plant Powered Plus.
Plant Powered Plus.
Yeah. So really awesome guy. And, but it's just like to have had so many downloads though of the Exam Room and reached, over 150 countries, reaching #1 for nutrition podcasts, and so many of them. It's mind blowing to me how ravenous the appetite is for health globally. This is not an American problem. It's not, a Canadian problem. This is a global issue that we're facing in terms of our health, and just to be able to pull back the curtain for people to see what is really going on in the world in terms of their health. I think it's really cool. It's really, really, really cool to be able to reach people in Mozambique and the Philippines and, every country in Europe. Like, it's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah. Do you have some advice that you've gotten on the podcast that like really sticks with you? Any gems of wisdom? Yeah.
The one thing, and this was from a really early episode of the Exam Room I was doing with Dr. Barnard. And I was telling him a little bit about my story and how I was like so hooked on food. And he was like, that wasn't your fault, right? And I was like, what? Because I always assumed it was. Like, nobody was holding a gun to my head telling me like I had to eat, 18 inches of, Philly cheesesteak and a bucket of fries. I like willingly volunteered. I gave my money to do this. But he's like, no. And like, then he walked me through the addictive properties of food. And so like, when I see somebody who is like super morbidly obese, it's like, it's not their fault. And they're hooked. They're just wearing their addiction literally on their sleeve and everywhere else. And that, I so sympathize with that person. And so I will never go up to somebody just cold and be like, it's not your fault, But when the opportunity presents itself, being able to pass that kind of advice along to them certainly makes them feel a lot better. Makes me feel better too, because I'm educating them. And, as they say back in the day, knowledge is half the battle. So there you go.
That's good advice. I mean, I've had Dr. Barnard on here as well. And he is a gem. He really is. He really is. Any other words of wisdom stick out to you?
Words of wisdom,
or little like nuggets of good advice?
There's such good advice. I mean, there's so much of it. And to me, like what I take away from the show, even more than the nutrition nuggets, are just like the incredible stories of people who have done such incredible transformations. Like, I thought that what I did in terms of losing the weight was something spectacular. No, man. Talk about my boy Dennis, right? Dennis was, like me, a fast food junkie. A lot of times I believe he mentioned like he would go to the fast food thing before going home to eat, and like hiding the evidence. Been there, done that. But Dennis thought he was having a heart attack one day. And he like is driving himself to the hospital. God bless. I'm having a heart attack. What am I going to do? Am I going to call 911? No, I cannot. Why? Because the ambulance won't stop at McDonald's on the way. So Dennis goes to friggin' McDonald's on his way to the ER. Okay. and like gets his hamburger and fries. He gets his fix, goes to the hospital, never eats another burger and fries again. His arteries are damn near completely blocked. It's a miracle he makes it there. Finished the hamburger, finished the fries, but never had another one again. Goes whole food, plant-based, and now is like just a role model for how to be resilient in terms of your health. And, you know, never healthier. I love hearing stories like that.
I do too. Do you have like any rituals that you do to prepare when you do a podcast? I'm not talking about researching the guests, but I'm like right before the podcast. Is there anything you do?
No, like
You
people
don't?
think that it's far more magical than it actually is. Like, no, man, I sit down, I flip on my mixer, do a mic check, make sure the camera's framed up, make sure I got, typically before I went on the feeding tube, a nice fresh hot cup of coffee. This is just hot water because that's literally the only thing I'm allowed to consume. And that's it. And then it's like you sit down and you have a conversation, you know? Could I walk you through putting on a little bit of powder before I do the exam room? Sure. But, you know, I didn't do that today.
Because I do. Oh my God. Now should I even say this?
Spill the tea, girl. You done started.
I sage my office. I get the sage it. I Palo Santo, make sure there's, you know, fresh energy. I meditate. I do a 5-minute meditation. As a matter of fact, I just sit on my mat and my pillow and I calm myself, I ground myself, and I also picture myself connecting with my guests. Like, I don't know if you felt it this morning, but before we got on, I was meditating and I pictured my heart connecting with your heart. And that's what I do. Before.
I thought I felt it.
I need to be more like Chuck. Just flip the damn thing on and.
Well, I mean, that's what I do. But I mean, like, this is what I do. Like, what I do works for me. What you do works for you, right? So it's like, I don't necessarily want to be all zenned out when I sit down to do these things. Like, I want to have energy. I want to be me. Yes. Like, but if you gotta, like, you know, do the smudge stick, do the smudge stick. Like, it's all good.
Yeah, and you know, and then I do sometimes I do like a little jump rope or something because I do not want to be zenned out. I do want to have some energy. You're right. Sometimes I might do my jump rope for a minute or a jumping, you know, a couple jumping jacks because you're right. I do also want to bring my energy back up.
Do you?
But
do you?
Do me. I'm a doing me. A couple last questions. What is there a person that you admire for the way they're aging?
Yeah, boy, that's an interesting one. I mean, you got to put Dr. Barnard on that list. I mean, this dude is
he's a nice looking man. He
Okay.
really is.
You know, I will relay that to him. I will take this clip.
I think I told him, don't worry. When he came on, I was like, "Ooh, wee, Dr. Barnard.
You are a handsome man." Oh, Neil.
He is.
I will let him know. Yeah, but yeah, so honestly, like him, I think Dr. Jessica Krant, dermatologist up in New York City, just, I mean, to look at her is like, just to see beauty, like it's unbelievable how beautiful her skin is. So yeah, those two come to mind. And then like, you can look at like the OG, like a Colin Campbell, right? This is a guy that's, you know, still doing his thing, you know? And he's like a little bit slower, maybe, sure, whatever. But like he's still out there doing his thing, and nobody can knock him. Like he's doing great. Like I love that. You know, same thing with Essie Caldwell Esselstyn. You know, it's just come on. Like those are my role models, man. Like I would love to get in that kind of position. I think that would be fantastic.
Essie and Ann Esselstyn. Oh my God.
Ann. Man, Ann Esselstyn
if I
is
could get
just
in
like,
her physical shape, I mean, I can't
holy
even do
crap.
half the exercise she can do in her, whatever, 90s.
Did you see the clip where we did a whole tribute to the entire Esselstyn family in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago? And Ann pulled that big friggin' like tractor tire.
The tire.
Yeah, across the stage. I was like, holy, is this happening right now? And she was doing it. I was like, all right, Ann.
Well, I know. She's incredible. She's
Love me some
like
Ann.
my favorite.
Super cool.
And then what's your favorite concert you've ever been to?
Oh boy. All right. So there's two.
Okay,
All right.
you can
Number
do two.
one was Ozfest one year. I believe System of a
Love it.
Down was playing, right? And like their live show was amazing. Like this was probably 20 years ago I was there and my ears are still ringing. Like just so good. And then the other one is so not PC, but what the hell? I mean, again, the name of the show is Badass Mother. So Ludacris, rap.
I love Ludacris.
You like Luda?
I love Ludacris.
So Luda, just puts out this album. He's on tour. Eminem. It was Exhibit opened. Luda was in the middle, and then Eminem was the closer. I was like, holy shit!
Oh my god!
Like this is the show, right? So like, but Luda had like this enormous dog on stage that would lift its leg and then like pee on people, but it was like water, And I was like, this is the funniest daggone thing I've ever seen in my entire life at a concert. And like, I will never forget that. Like,
wait,
it was
it's
so
not
crass.
A real dog, right?
No.
Oh, okay. I was like, how are they
20,
making the
30
dog pee
foot
water?
mechanical dog. Yeah. And it would just like lift up its leg every so often and then just like pee on the audience. And I was like, this is the funniest damn thing I've ever seen. I was so grateful to be in the lawn seats and not up close. I didn't have to worry about getting hit. But yeah, man, that was hysterical.
I've never seen any of those three. I go to concerts all the time and I love live music. And I don't know how I've never seen any of those three bands because they're three really good ones.
I don't know. What do you typically go to? Like I would think, in all honesty, at 43, like if I were to go to a hip hop show, I would stand out like a sore thumb. I'm up for it. Like whatever, good music's good music to me.
Yeah.
But have you ever been to a hip hop show, a rap concert?
I mean, it's been a while, but yeah, I mean, I
That's
feel
a good time, man.
I've had so many good concerts that I really didn't belong at. And more as I get older, like all the time, but I don't care. No. I'm just going. I'm just having fun. I mean, I live in Austin, Texas. We're about to have South by Southwest and I'll be at all the things.
You got all the stuff coming. Yeah. We go see Earth, Wind and Fire every so often. Yeah. Earth, Wind and Fire puts on a hell of a live show.
Yeah, I just saw them last year, and they're coming again with Lionel Richie. I'll probably go see them again. They're so good. They put on such a good show.
That's awesome. With Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie's the man.
He really is. The funniest thing, I think I told this before, is that my husband was like, oh my God, Lionel Richie, this is like 6 months ago, is playing at the Paramount, which is this tiny little theater. It's like the size of a, movie theater with a balcony. It's Art Deco, kind of beautiful theater. He's like, can you believe that? I'm getting tickets. Well, he didn't read the fine print and it was a book tour. And there were these drunk ladies behind us. Nobody else read the fine print either. Everybody was really pissed that they were there to hear Lionel Richie talk about his book instead of singing the hits. Then these drunk ladies behind us wouldn't shut up. Sing. And, people were getting mad. And he's like, excuse me, ma'am, I'm not going to sing. I'm here to talk about my book. I mean, I thought a riot was going to break out, but.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Don't upset the drunk Karens in the back. But, it was. Honestly, I was disappointed, but I'm like, okay, I'm here. Obviously he's going to have some things to say. And he did. And it was great. It was a great night.
Cool. Hey, man, everybody's happy. Yeah.
It was good. Everyone was happy. Yeah. Well, Chuck Carroll, I can't thank you enough for being so open and being here after your surgery, schlepping your feeding tube around and making time to come on the Age Like a Badass Mother podcast. I know people have probably already listened to the exam room, but if not, and what was your new podcast?
The Gut Insiders. The Gut Insiders. Yeah. And then also, if you go over to, the important thing is like, if you are struggling with a mystery illness or even a chronic illness, right? And your days are just dark and like, you need a little bit of hope, or you've got somebody in your life that's in that position. Like I've actually also started a newsletter that I call Lost and Found, Chuck's Lost and Found, so it's like you lose your health, but we're going to help you find it again. And it just kind of walks people through my journey and a lot of the tips and strategies that I found effective along the way, which includes a lot of, how to have these conversations with your doctor when you feel like a lot's being left on the table, and advocating for yourself. So we kind of, in the newsletter, teach strategies for doing that. And so if you go to my name, chuckcarroll.com, and sign up for my newsletter, it's completely free. It's just kind of my way of giving back to the world and educating people and, maybe starting to write a little bit more. But weekly tips and updates and things like that.
I'm going to put that in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chuck Carroll, 2Rs, 2Ls.com.
You got it.
And that is so just another gift that's come out of this whole thing that you're giving to people. I really appreciate, I know the world appreciates that you're doing that. So continued health and success. And I hope that 43 and 44 and beyond are fantastic. I hope that you'll come back when you're feeling better so you can tell me all the good things about aging well.
Let's go. This is one of the few podcasts where I can, actually show people that I got a potty mouth most days. So let's go.
Say whatever do you want to say something?
No, we have to save more for the next episode.
You don't want to drop an F-bomb or anything?
No.
Chuck Carroll?
We got to work up to that one.
Well,
F-bomb. We might put that one behind a paywall. If you want to hear Chuck say the F word, pony up.
Okay.
Don't worry, it goes to charity.
All right. We'll continue to be well, Chuck. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening, friend. From my heart to yours, be well until we meet again.